All right, then. Greetings, one and all, wherever you may be listening to us from. Hopefully, as per usual, all over the planet. I am in California. My name is Jonathan Ellerby. I am the Executive Director for Spirituality and Practice. And on behalf of Frederick and Marianne Brusset and the whole Spirituality and Practice team, we would like to welcome you, one and all, to what I guess we already know is going to be a fantastic time with one of our most beloved teachers and friends, Sir Thomas More. Now, we have Tom here today to talk about his new book, Soul Therapy, but most of you know him from his tens of volumes of other books. This is an incredibly prolific teacher, writer, and someone who I believe has really journeyed with our contemporary culture as we have moved deeper and deeper into a broad social understanding of the significance of spirituality. Of course, his landmark book was Care of the Soul, which really made spirituality more accessible and relevant and safe for so many people who otherwise maybe didn't feel invited to explore that field. And then he has gone on to examine spirituality and its role in our lives through almost every imaginable angle, including golf, medicine, sex. I mean, I could go on and on. And the last thing I want to say about Dr. Moore in this introduction is that in addition to this sort of bridge work that we've seen come from him, which is helping bring spirituality to everyday life, I think the thing that endears so many of us to him, and certainly it's spirituality and practice, is the depth from which this comes. And so you can also find books, articles, workshops from Dr. Moore that go deep into the history of religion and spirituality, that go into more academic perspectives. And so we really have a special moment today to be with someone who has considered spirituality deeply from the practitioner's point of view, as a monk, from the guide, counselor, and coach's point of view, as a therapist, but also as this kind of troubadour who has brought spiritual consciousness to millions of people who probably wouldn't have realized how relevant it was for them. So on that note, welcome. Can you hear me? We have, did we lose each other, Tom?
Oh, no, I'm fine. I'm here. I hear you well.
Okay. So,
Thank you, Jonathan, for saying those things. Very nice.
well, for people that haven't met you, I think it's important that they understand that they need to stay to the very last second of our time, because this is important. And in light of everything that I've just shared, I think that it's really fascinating to me once again that the timing of this book is also very synchronistic, serendipitous, I don't know, well-timed for yet another movement in our society. I really do believe there's a parallel between your work and modern movements. So specifically, through the worldwide pandemic and all the economic and political and social upheaval that followed, racially motivated, politically motivated, and so on, we have seen an explosion in the need for therapy and therapists. Every therapist I know is exhausted, overworked, doesn't have a lot of extra time in their schedule. So what brought you to write this book? And is that timing a coincidence, or how did you come to offer this to the world at this time?
No, I don't think it's a coincidence, Jonathan. I am very aware, as you are, that therapists are working hard these days. They can't keep up with all the people that want some guidance. So I'm aware of that. And I'm also aware of something else, and that is that the world needs therapeutic thought. I always tell therapists when I'm teaching them that they should go public. They should be on the radio and on podcasts and any kind of way to get to the public, because we don't think therapeutically often enough. And yet one of the basic principles in this book is everyone is a therapist sometimes.
Mm.
We all have a therapist in us, you can put it that way. In the book, I keep putting, I talk about therapists, but then I talk about therapists in quotation marks, meaning those people are not professionals, but anybody who talks to people in a way that is caring and useful and trying to help them get from one point to another. So that's one of my goals here, and it is very timely. We have a lot of political raving kind of talk these days that is not considered, it's not reflective, and it's hurting us tremendously across the world. So I'm really writing partly to the world saying, let's begin talking therapeutically.
Mm. And I have a few sort of foundational questions just around the book and your relationship to therapy. Did you have a target audience in mind or a personal motivation? And I do want to clarify for people who haven't read the book yet, it's a fantastic book. I truly, truly believe this kind of thinking, as you would say, should be introduced really in absolutely in every college program, possibly every 12th grade high school program. There's something essential in this book, and so it can be an important companion for professionals in therapeutic roles, social workers, psychologists, counselors, lawyers, doctors. But as you've said, it's really written with, quote, the average person in mind, and the idea that we're all caregiving all the time. Um, so who did you really have in mind when you wrote this, or was there a special purpose?
I have to make a confession about that because for a long time, I didn't know what to do. I wanted to write to professionals, but I also wanted to write to the ordinary person. And
Mm.
I thought, at different times, I thought, should I write two books? But no, I don't want to do two books on therapy. Is it possible to write to both professionals and non-professionals at the same time? That's what I tried to do. It's a little tricky to do that. But what I do in the book is I explore with therapists how they might deepen their practice. So I'm hoping, I feel that this book could be very useful for the professional therapist to move away from just uh, trying to make people live better adjusted lives and move toward meaning and the spiritual side being there without being too heavy, but there as moving toward values and making sense of life and having a purpose, all those things. So I wanted to do that for the professional. At the same time, I'm hoping that the ordinary person could look over the shoulder of the professional as they're reading this book and learn something about how to talk to your friends and relatives when they ask for some help. I think all of us have people that contact us and say, I just lost my job or I'm getting divorced. Can we just have a talk sometime? And I think that's where you put your hat on as a therapist. But a lot of people feel inadequate and they don't have much confidence. They say, well, I'm not trained. That's a very common response. I think it has a lot to do with the over professionalizing of that work that is done. But I think that this book is really aimed at also helping the ordinary person feel more confident in talking to somebody close to them.
So let me grab something that might be in some people's minds before we go any further. And despite what you've just said, I know that there are some people listening who are still putting the act of therapy, counseling, coaching onto others. In other words, they're thinking, oh, okay, he's not just talking about counselors and psychologists. He's also talking about those people who are caregivers, but that wouldn't be me. And I believe that's partly because we've been trained and taught and based on the book, somewhat for the better and somewhat to our detriment, we've been trained and taught that some things should be left to the professionals. So what would you say to someone who's already kind of settling into a little resistance before we go any further? Well, I don't know, is it really appropriate for me to be in a therapeutic seat when I don't have training?
Well, I'm quite clear that there are times when you need a professional. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
And I feel from my experience of therapists around the world, really, I've taught therapists, psychotherapists for many years, and I find that there are a lot of really good ones, and I think that that's a lot of people are well trained, and you should, for really difficult situations, you should really consult someone like that. I do that work myself all the time. I've been doing it for 40 years. I think it's the best profession in the world. On the other hand, think of it this way. A parent, a father or mother, in talking to a child, let's say the child's acting up a bit, the parent may have a tendency unconsciously, without even thinking about it, to yell back at the child and say, well, do what I tell you. Do this now. I mean, the way people talk to children, it's amazing. I hear it all the time when I just go out to the store and notice I've watched and notice how parents talk to their kids.
Mm.
And that is not therapeutic. Believe me, those kids are going to be in therapy themselves someday because they've been treated that way. So, but a parent, a mother or father, could be a little bit sophisticated about momentarily speaking like a therapist, or I would just say speaking therapeutically. Don't think of the word therapy as a profound analysis of your past and all of that,
Right.
requiring great knowledge. Just therapy, the word means, the origin of that word it means either care or service. Care
Mm.
or service. Those are the only two meanings I've been able to come up with for the origins of that word. Care and service. No understanding, figuring out, making better, none of that. Care and service.
So let me jump in right there. Clarify, I think I can restate that the reality is no matter who's listening or what they think of themselves, whether we like it or not, we're always or we're frequently in positions or conversations in which a therapeutic approach or thinking or style is only going to make things better, so to speak, be helpful. Is there such a thing as too much therapeutic thinking, too much therapeutic communication? Because I think that I kind of run in a variety of communities, from coaching and speaking with groups that are cynical about these things to coaching and speaking in communities that have so absorbed the therapeutic consciousness that everything is a therapeutic conversation and everything's about empowerment and self-disclosure and authenticity. Can we overdo it?
Well, it's my problem to some extent. My problem is that I am steeped in ancient literature, and I have a PhD in religious studies. That's my field. And so when I hear the word therapy, I mean, I've spent many years studying Greek, and I hear the word, I hear that word in its Greek roots, as I just said. So I'm not thinking of the word the way we use it in the modern world, where you have people using psychobabble and talking about, treating each other as therapists. Like the worst thing is when a husband and wife try to analyze each other or figure each other out and become that kind of professional therapist with them. That's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm taking this word and saying, really, when you get really down to it, to its basics, the word therapy means that you offer care and you serve the person that you're talking to. You help them in some way. You move them somewhere through what they're experiencing. And so I think that if we can see it that way, I know it's hard to separate these things because normally we think, oh, you're talking like a therapist. It's like some professional analyzing you. I don't mean that. I'm hearing the word therapeutic means talking in such a way that I'm not just unconsciously venting my emotions. I'm aware of the impact of my words on the person. Let's say a child. I'm aware that if I just blast the child, that's not going to help any. But if I can help the child understand what's going on with just a few words of understanding, that
Mhm.
would be more therapeutic speaking and response. I think we can do that all day long. All of us, we can do that. I hear it a lot in businesses and in the workplace that I talk to business leaders sometimes, and they have someone in their company who is having trouble with alcohol, and they feel a need to talk to them, but they don't know how they can do it. You
Right.
know, should I just send them to a therapist, or is there some value in me talking to them somewhat therapeutically? I'd say there is. Know your limitations. Don't be analytical. Don't pretend you're a professional, but be a human being who can listen. And I give many lessons and suggestions in my book how you can be this kind of an ordinary therapist.
This is fantastic. I appreciate these clarifications, and we still have so much more. We're just scratching the surface. I've barely gotten into my preliminary questions. Um, Once again, I'm gonna mention the name of your book throughout our time because I want people who join later to know we're talking about soul therapy. That's the name of the book, but it's also an approach. Now, I want to finish up this sort of um, preliminary clarification piece because I think what you've just clarified, and this is my belief, so I'm maybe asking you to affirm or disagree or add on, that the greatest power in a therapist really lies not in the jargon or styles of talk, but it's the power of presence. It's the kind of compassionate, open, listening presence they bring. In fact, it was curious, but just before I fell asleep last night, I thought of the old expression unconditional positive regard. Wasn't that Carl Rogers?
Carl Rogers, yes.
Yeah. And I wonder, just as we kind of set the stage for all this, can you speak to this idea that really what you're inviting is as much a manner of presence, an attitude, as it is about any specific technique? Is unconditional positive regard really at the heart of this? And for that matter, what does that mean to people who don't get it?
Yes, it's very important to me. In my training, I was trained in the Rogerian therapy myself
Oh,
many years ago. So I know that very well, and had supervision and people, guiding me all the way through how to do that kind of work. It's a little more subtle and complicated than people sometimes realize.
mhm,
But it is unconditional positive regard. That's his phrase. That means that unconditional, that you have a positive attitude toward your client. This is very important to me. Of course, I had it drilled into me as a student of therapy, but it fits into my whole approach because I feel that no matter what a person is going through, whether you like them or not, this person you're dealing with, you can't like everybody. Whether you're interested in them or not, you can have it, you can approach this person with unconditional positive regard, that you have a very positive attitude toward their soul. That's what I do. I say you relate to their soul, not to their personality. You relate to the soul, even if a person is kind of crazy and maybe caught up in a lot of paranoia and things like that. Um, you see all these problems, but you see the soul of the person underneath it all. That's
mhm.
what I do. And I respond to that. and I respond positively because I love who they are, what they're trying to get, and what they're dealing with. The things that, the bad deals that they got in their lives that led them to the pain they have. And to see them as really like anyone, just trying their best to get along. And so that kind of positivity is important. And then when I teach therapists for years, I show them a slide. I used to do this a lot. A slide that is a quotation from Buddhism, from uh, the healing Buddha. The healing Buddha has vows attached to the Buddha, anyone who wants to follow the healing Buddha. And one of them is very simply, you heal with your presence.
Mhm.
And I used to really work that a lot with the people I was teaching, because I think that's so valuable that you don't go and talk to a person, I don't, whether you're a professional or not, you don't talk to them with a lot of jargon in your mouth or a lot of um, fancy terms in your mind, with a lot of agendas and little tricks that you use. You don't do that. You heal with your presence.
Mm.
That means that the most important thing you can do in preparation to be a therapist, informal or formal, is to work on yourself. Deal with your own emotions. Deal with those things that you need to deal with, and you don't have to be perfect at all. In fact, no one's perfect. So you realize your imperfections, but at the same time, you have dealt with your life, and you're on your way toward uh, a better relationship to your past and to the things that get in your way.
So this is the perfect segue to the next step I wanted to take with you. I wanted to talk about the title itself, soul therapy. And I really have two kind of questions or areas of questions around this. The first is to ask you maybe to elaborate a little more on what you've just talked about, but in the context of this question or observation. What I have noticed over the years being in this field of personal growth, wellness, spirituality, and so on, is that there are some really different views about the appropriateness and the relationship between health and well-being and spirituality. Now, some of the primary camps that I'm interested in, just putting on the table for our listeners so that you can kind of respond and work around it. Some would say, I'm interested in spirituality. That means I'm interested in God. I'm interested in practices that connect me with God or a higher power. I'm not here to spend time talking about my childhood or my parents. What's the point in wordsmithing how I said something and whether I made someone feel a certain way? I mean, isn't that just all a distraction from the real work of realizing spirit in our lives? Aren't these really different? Like, leave the psychology to psychologists. I'm a spiritual seeker. Now, there's others who would say quite the opposite. No, no, no. If we're going to wake up fully to the presence of God or spirit, well, then by definition, we are responsible to remove all the barriers to that. And if they are emotional, psychological, well, and that's what it means. We got to dive in and we got to remove everything that gets in the way, reactivity, triggers, transference, projections, things you talk about in the book. And then I suppose there's a third camp, and that's the camp that that I would say believes that psychological well-being is spiritual enough. In other words, camp 1 and 2 both have ideas of spirit and God and a greater metaphysical reality, but a different idea about whether psychology and healing serves it. Then there's kind of this third group that we find mingling amongst the spiritual seekers that would say, well, I think being spiritual is just being a good person. I think being spiritual is just, not being reactive, not being angry. And really, they're talking about psychological well-being. How do you relate to these camps? And when you talk about soul therapy, how specifically do you view the connection between psychological well-being in spiritual growth?
That's an extremely complicated question, you know.
Yeah, we could spend the rest of the time on this.
We could easily. I was thinking that one of the very first, well, I think it was the very first uh, work I did with spirituality and practice with Marianne and Frederick 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. I remember being in New York, I think at the Trinity Church there, and we were filming. I was my work was very popular at the time, and they were filming me. I think I was ironing shirts or something. I don't know. It was some ordinary practice, and the theme of the film was spirituality in ordinary life, or something of that nature. That was the theme. So there's a way in which I think it's very important to have our spiritual life be very intimately connected with our whole life, our life in the world, whatever we do, our work, our families, entertainments, our sports, everything we do, our travel, can be part of our spiritual life. These two, the psychological and the spiritual, can be almost like two sides of a coin, or they affect each other tremendously. There are many spiritual emotions. There are many psychological reasons why people turn toward spiritual practices. That's something I think really needs to be explored. And you have to see that when you are getting caught up in various spiritual practices, that there are emotional matters for you from your past, maybe relationships from previously. Our childhood really does live with us our whole lives, and so it's just about impossible to separate spirituality from psychology. On the other hand, I am somebody who loves the spiritual life tremendously. It's my field is religious studies. And I think that I would like us all to aim toward being mystics and to really go as far as we can in spiritual practice, as far as we can, really do it, really become mystical in our approach to life. But in order to do that without going crazy, you better have your emotions in order and have dealt a little bit with your past influences. The psychological is very important because that is so much a part of that mystical work. They're inseparable. And so much of it is invisible, you can't see where the connections are. So I don't know. I just do the two together. I don't tone down the spiritual to say, oh, it's just really, as Maslow said, as the higher reaches. He said, wrote in one of his books that psychology and spirituality separate at a certain point. I don't believe that. I don't think that's right, as much as I have gotten from Maslow over the years. I think he's wrong there, that actually psychology and spirituality are together all the way through, and they're connected. And the best thing to have a spiritual life would, I think, to really develop a spiritual life and learning how to meditate and become more mystical in your awareness and consciousness, all of that, more extremely ethical, all of that would be definitely helped by being in psychotherapy at the same time.
So you brought up a couple of things that I can't let go before I go to my last question about the title, soul therapy. So when you talk about mysticism and about how that journey can always benefit from psychological maturity, essentially, what I'm reminded of, and I think we have that in common. My PhD is also in comparative religion. I'm also a spirituality junkie. But one thing that I have noticed over the years is there's sort of an idealizing of the mystics, as though they were all psychologically well, as though we all want to be like Saint Teresa or Meister Eckhart or Saint John of the Cross or whoever you want to come up with, Rumi, and so on. But when you do an actual academic study of the lives of some of these people, I mean, many of them were really a mess, right? I mean, many of them were very strange and almost disturbed people. And I wonder if you could comment about, well, I mean, I leave the interpretation up to you, whether it's dissociation. So maybe we're looking at this through a psychological lens. Is there a cost to being deeply spiritual without psychological maturity or the ability to integrate it, right? Because I think for a lot of people, spirituality in daily life sounds like a luxury or a platitude, but we're actually talking about something much more important. I think we're talking about integration. Do, how do you see this topic? And maybe for our listeners, could you begin by clarifying what you mean by mystic and then go on to address, is there a danger to have your spirituality too separated from the way you show up every day?
By mystic, I mean somebody who really is devoted to transcending the world in which we live, who they are, transcending our current state of knowledge, trying to really get to the frontiers of our human capacity, and maybe be closer related to what might be called the infinite or to the mysterious. I like the idea of mysterious here, that the mystic is able to uh, get beyond the limitations of a conventional life and in a positive way, aiming toward a greater knowledge of what human life is capable of, and uh, maybe realizing that if you do have a close relationship to the edges of our awareness and to the mysterious, that it becomes then a source of profound satisfaction and guidance. It can lead you to a really terrific life. It reminds me of some people I know who have had near-death experiences, who are told from those experiences or who are led to an extremely ethical life as a result of really trying to do something about the world. So I think that that's the mystical. That's only a portion of it, obviously, but a kind of a thumbnail description of how, as I see the importance of the mystical realm. And I like to keep pursuing that through nature. My personally, the guides for me in this realm are the transcendentalists of New England, Emerson and Thoreau and Emily Dickinson. I would even include Walt Whitman and many other writers who, amazingly, 150 or so years ago, really tried to break through out of conventional religion into a mystical way of life that was not separate from ordinary living. And they wrote incredible books. So they guide me in this direction. They understood how to really go as far as you can in the spiritual life and at the same time be very grounded in your ordinary daily life. Something else I have to say, though, and that is that I was thinking of artists when you talked about mystical teachers who were maybe mad or neurotic or even psychotic. Artists are like that too. So many artists are, in order to do their work, their lives are a mess, or their emotions are a mess, or they're wacky. They're just wacky. They can't get along in this world very well. Well, you sacrifice something. I mean, I like to work with artists so that they are not so disturbed emotionally, so that they can be emotionally solid and do their work and still be open to inspiration. On the other hand, I don't get too worried about it. I don't say, therefore, we shouldn't try to be artists. I think we should try to be mystics, even though when we look at some of the really great ones, they didn't seem psychologically very well put together. So let's not do it that way. Let's learn about their mysticism, but let's try to also become more psychologically sophisticated. We have that opportunity, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Let's bring the spirit and soul together, and you can't separate them. Once you begin to separate spirit from soul, they get each of them becomes neurotic, more and more neurotic, and that's a problem.
Wow. So that's wonderful. That takes me to the last question I wanted to ask you about the title, soul therapy. And I feel like every time we talk, or at least do an interview, I ask you a similar question on behalf of the listeners, and I think that with each topic and setting, it takes a different lens, which is, can you elaborate more on what is this thing called soul? And you said something so important just now, that the more focused we become on a separated aspect of self, whether it's something as magnificent as spirit or soul or everyday life, but you said that in focusing on any one area too much, um, we can run into a lot of trouble. So in order to focus on all of them, to integrate them, especially for people who haven't read the book yet, what do you mean by soul and spirit? I mean, is soul just, a nice word for true self or deep meaning, or are you really talking about something metaphysically different? Spirit, soul, and the everyday life.
Well, we're not talking about things that you can measure and you can look at with a flashlight. It's not that kind of a thing. We're talking about dimensions of human experience. And in a way, it feels like, yes, there's a thing called soul, a thing that is the spirit that dwells in us. I think that's good language, even though maybe it's not entirely precise. I would look at it this way, that I think most people who are spiritual understand that the spirit is infinitely high. Like I was in Charleston recently, South Carolina, to give a talk, and I was walking down the street and I was able to get a photograph of three incredibly tall steeples in one picture. There were so many churches and steeples there, and to me, that is a good image of the spirit. The steeple of a church starts small, starts wide on the earth, and then it comes to a vanishing point. It points us upward. It's upward. We usually think of spirit as up and transcendent. We want to get as high as we can. And if you look at the images used in spirituality, that's usually where they go. So it's an upward movement away from the body, away from the world, toward that which we can imagine and idealize and wonder about, and to the mysteries there. So that's where we're headed in a way, in the spirit. I think we understand that, and that's a very valuable. That's why we meditate, in order to try to find a way to reach those higher levels. That's the way it's discussed. But the soul then would be sort of an upside down steeple.
Mm-hmm.
It would be the steeple going down
Mm-hmm.
so deep into ourselves that it is also infinite, infinitely deep. And we can go deeper and deeper and deeper into ourselves to find the spring, like the water spring, from which our identity flows and where our life comes from. But it's all about where we live. It's our life. We find that depth of soul in our home. You could never stop talking about the importance of your home to the soul, or your family, the family connections, family roots, or things that you love and you're attached to, like your pets. How attached, isn't that weird that you can be attached to pets? I saw a headline in the news the other day that someone in Yellowstone, their dog went into the hot spring, and this woman went to kind of save the dog and got burned herself. And I thought, well, this is a great mystery, that we are so attached to our pets that we would, risk our lives to save them, to help them. This is a sign of soul, of attachment. So you see, I'm as much in favor of attachment, and very profoundly, as in the spirit, we might be interested in detachment, which makes sense for the spirit. I want to do both. I want to be detached and I want to be attached, because I want to have the soul and the spirit in dialogue with each other, one supporting the other. And I think as a human being, that's how we live. We live in these dimensions, and we have to see how they intersect, and we have to care for both dimensions all the way.
So this is magnificent. I so appreciate this, and I'm so happy for anyone to hear this beautiful message. But to take this into the context of the book, is there, so there's a wonderful section on being the vessel, building the vessel, the section that includes build the vessel, listening, getting stuck, mists of childhood. Um, I wonder, with such a great emphasis on presence and listening, do you think there's a role um, for the average person, so to speak? I don't know what that even really means, but let's say for people who are not professionals, to go beyond holding space and listening, and is there an opportunity to invite the balance point? In other words, for those that maybe identify too deeply with the woundedness, the earthiness, the meanness, to invite them to that transcendent bigger picture. And conversely, for those that are, involved in what some might call spiritual bypass, too lofty, too transcendent, too idealizing things and very disconnected. Do you think it's appropriate for lay people to invite that level of integration or consideration, or does it get tricky when you start to try to direct people?
Well, we're talking about having conversations. The subtitle of my book is The Art and Craft of Carrying Conversations.
Yeah.
So we're not preaching at each other. If you'd start doing that, or if you're proselytizing, meaning you're trying to convert somebody to your own way of doing things, that's probably the first and worst mistake you can make in the spiritual realm. But the thing is, there are many dangers in the spiritual area, many dangers. Literalism, taking things too literally that are intended to be metaphors and poetic. That's a huge problem in the spiritual realm. Or of becoming masochistic, of feeling that you're going to be more spiritual if you deny yourself, and if you give up whatever you can, or if you try to be humble. All these things that are masochistic, that's a big problem in the spiritual life. And a lot of people get caught in it. And the other side of it is that they allow other people to be sadistic with them, like teachers and leaders. That we see that happening in many spiritual groups where their leaders begin to dominate them in an SM way, sadomasochistic way. It's a real problem in the spiritual life. So there are many difficulties there. But if you can be a level-headed, ordinary person who doesn't get inflated when you get close to a spiritual idea, which is Jung warned against that we get inflated when we get close to these big ideas. If you can avoid that and just keep your ordinariness and just talk to your friend and say, well, the way I do it is I like to meditate when I'm on the water. It's the best time for me. I feel like I'm there in that place that's quite mystic for me, to be on the ocean maybe. And that's just something they say. And they're not saying you should go to the ocean because I do. That's a problem. But you can talk to a person about your experience of the spiritual life in a way that doesn't try to make a convert of them or to judge the person in any way.
So I can't even believe how quickly the time is going. Let's go a little deeper into what you're doing right now, which is giving some examples of what people can do. And I don't mind being a little, poking at you a little bit to say, I can hear the complexity of all this, because even when we can sit in an environment like this and say, well, certain practices are too, fill in the blank, but too much power to the teacher, too much self-denial. At the same time, I think I hear you saying, even though we can observe that from a distance, and let's just say somewhat academically, we still have to be careful that if someone truly enjoys a week of solitude and depriving themselves of things that we'd like, whether it's chocolate or phones or whatever it is, that we don't, that we're not putting ourselves in the position of judging, evaluating, labeling. So what you recommended, though, is one wonderful thing: speak with personal reference, right? This is what works for me. Are there some other things that you'd like people to take away, either as a way to entice them to read Soul Therapy, or maybe they're never going to read it, but you thinking, gosh, there are a few tools in this book. Because you, by the way, there's this wonderful section, Therapy in the World, Caring for the World's Soul. You know, so you do make this connection between the act of learning to think therapeutically and be therapeutically to the big picture and how we can be all part of a better world. So are there some tools or skills you'd like to make sure people hear about today?
Well, there are lots of skills that could be learned fairly easily. People almost all, when they talk about this kind of thing, talk about listening skills. What I try to emphasize in my book here is not only listening in a certain way to the other person, in a way that you really can hear more deeply. For example, I talk about to be more skillful about story. That when people tell their story, if you know about stories and about narratives, even literature, if you read novels and if you read biographies, you'll probably be able to listen very well to a person's stories. But I also try to give some suggestions about how to understand what stories are. And sometimes stories have a shadow. They're trying to keep you from getting to know the person too. So it's a complex thing to listen to a person. I also suggest listening to yourself when you're talking to somebody. No, don't just, your listening skills is not just about listening to the other person, listening to what's going on within you as you talk. And even in agreeing to talk to somebody, what was going on with you? What is your motive? Where is it coming from? How clean is it? Doesn't have to be perfect, but how clean is it? And to listen to yourself and know more about who you are when you're working with someone else. Those are skills. And I
Mm,
also have a chapter on transference,
yeah.
which is a little more technical. But it's about that's a very simple, really. It's just about how when two people come together, they are bringing tons of memories and experiences with them. Their imagination is full of past and present thoughts and personalities and events and times when they were hurt. And they bring a lot with them. Both sides do. And when they interact, it's really good to be able to see what some of those unconscious fantasies are that are interchanged when the two people talk to each other. That takes a little skill. It takes a lot, even, professional has to work at that to be able to know what transference is about. And, but I bring that up because I think even the ordinary person could understand to some extent that they might look at the person who's talking to them and they're seeing their father in them, or they're seeing an uncle or a former boss in that person, and they're reacting accordingly. So that's transference. And I think so there are skills, there are lots of skills and awarenesses you need in order to do this kind of work well, whether you're a professional or an amateur.
So just, I wanted to see if we could go a little deeper into story, because I know story is important to you. It's a very important part of the book, and it does connect to transference. There's the idea that I had noted is the idea that the story form is therapeutic. Now, I'm going to share something the way I think I understand as it, for example, connects to transference, but I'd like you to correct me if I'm wrong and elaborate for others. Part of the way I connect the way you talk about story and transference is to remember that essentially, no matter what you're hearing from someone or the way you're hearing that story, you're carrying your own. And so there's two filters of reality that should not be seen as literal. The story itself is a mechanism, a vehicle of sorts. Theirs is, and yours is. And it seems there's this value to becoming very conscientious that what you're hearing is, quote, just a story. And I say just a story to emphasize both its strength and its place. In other words, just hear the way they tell it, the way you would a fairy tale, and explore the characters. Be mindful you're not reacting as though that is a literal description of the person across from you. When you understand story, I think transference becomes a little more clear. But you write about this and speak about this far better than I do. Could you elaborate a little more about why understanding story is so important?
Well, at some level, the person you're talking to probably has a scattering of emotions and thoughts uh, and memories about what's bothering them, of why they want to talk to you. They have, it's formless. They have a lot of material. They don't know what to do with it. That's part of the problem. It's just there, and it's floating around them, and that's maddening to have all these emotions come and go, and thoughts come and go, and nothing that really makes sense of what's happening. By the way, Robert J. Lifton, a Harvard professor, wrote a wonderful book about the Japanese when they were attacked with the atomic bomb. That afterwards, he said they were in a storyless state for a long time, and they felt crazy. They didn't know what to think. It was only when they were able to begin to tell stories of that
Mm,
experience that they began to regain their emotional health.
mm,
That story's been on my mind for years. I had a chance to talk to him about it once because it was so important to me what he wrote about that. And I bring that into my practice. So I feel that they've had trauma and they've had some difficult experiences and influences that have made them kind of crazy. They're disturbed because they have all these feelings. Well, if I, as a person listening to them, if I know about stories and the importance of stories, I can encourage storytelling.
mm,
I think that's part of my job.
mhm,
I'm the story expert in a way, and I will talk to a person in such a way that they will tell the story of what's going on. I can do that by asking you certain details and ask who this person was and who that person was and build up the material for a story. And then the stories come out. And we have to understand when you're listening to the story that this is a version of what happened. This is not a tape recording or a video. This is a story. This is a fiction
mhm,
about
mhm,
what happened. And so we're in the realm of fiction, which doesn't make it less, but you have to know where you are. It's a story told. And so you have to understand that the story tells something about the person telling it right now. And
mhm,
that's very useful to be able to talk that way and to be sophisticated about storytelling. So you don't just romanticize a story or take it too literally, or don't question it, at least in your own mind, because you know that sometimes stories are not accurate, or they are there to protect the person telling them, or they're there to mislead the person listening. There's a lot of shadow stuff in
mhm.
storytelling too. So it's a complicated business, but not too complicated. It's a lot more, it's a lot less complicated than learning how to use your iPhone. I'm,
Well, and what I hear you saying is that, ironically, for the context of the conversation, we don't need to be, we don't all need to be such skilled therapists as to diagnose a story, pick it apart, explain it. The simple act of inviting a story allows people to organize their inner world and express it in a way that is itself therapeutic. And that can be our contribution.
exactly. I should have said that myself. That's
No,
excellent.
no, you said it in a brilliant way. I
Oh, that's
so
very good, Jonathan. That's a very good point. That you listen to the story, and you don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to mess with it.
so remarkably, we're almost out of time. And whenever you and I talk, we tell people it's going to be an hour, and then you and I tell each other it's going to be 45 minutes, and then we're just racing to finish before we run out of time. So, with just a few minutes left, I wonder, gosh, there's really so much to talk about. But I wonder if we could end on sort of a grand note. And when I say a grand note, I mean in terms of the broadest applications. And you do sort of dive in and out of the personal applications, but I feel like there's an ever-present awareness that this book, Soul Therapy, it's not just to help people with their individual relationships. It is about a contribution to a better world. That therapeutic thinking, therapeutic styles are about an, I guess what we could call a needed change. Can you speak to the big picture that you're hoping to be a part of with this
Well, just
book?
imagine if our politicians, for example, could talk to each other therapeutically.
Right.
If they had a little bit, just a tiny little dose of therapy, the therapeutic in their conversations. They don't. They act out. They talk like crazy people who don't have any self-reflection whatsoever. It's like total psychological immaturity so often. Not always, but often. So if we can't get along that way in this world, if our leaders don't have any psychological sophistication about these things. So I would like to see this book, given freely to every senator and legislator, able,
Yes.
and every mayor and governor, and say, you could talk and think differently about things. We could be dedicated to higher values. That's where your spirituality would come in. The value of this country. Keep this country going. Don't threaten it just because you're crazy about certain ideas that you're trying to defend for yourself. Have the other in mind. That's what we do. Unconditional positive regard, that much alone. Listen to each other. Listen to what the person is saying, and make that part of your role as a leader. I'm going to listen. I'm not just going to talk. I'm going to really listen. Sometimes people say that, but they don't listen deeply. So I think the whole thing our whole world situation could be improved greatly through becoming more psychologically alert and educated.
I cannot say enough wonderful things about Soul Therapy, the book. In fact, just talking, I'm already realizing I have to buy more copies for people I know. Really, I think it's a very, very important book. I can't thank you enough for this conversation. Um, and if I may, to put a little cap on it for myself, when we talk about spiritual maturity and spiritual growth, I think one of the things that we see across traditions, religious and spiritual, is that service, a deep sense of connection that is compassionate and caring, is an expression of, of spiritual maturity and higher, I want to be careful about judgmental language, but about higher levels of consciousness and a fuller way of being. And this book is just such an important companion because if you can't get there by divine realization, well, you can get there step by step. And practicing a therapeutic or caring way of life uh, seems a great practice. So on that note, is there anything you'd like to conclude with?
Well, I agree totally with what you just said. It's tricky to get the spiritual life together with the psychological. Uh, One way to do it is to be less literal about everything,
Mm,
and it's the literalism that divides religions and spiritual movements. Um, the thing is, the arts and religion go together, and one line I love in the Gospels, Jesus says, "I speak in parables."
mm,
I love that because what he's saying is, don't take me too literally.
mm,
I speak in parables. And I take that to mean that whenever he speaks in parables. And that means in fictions and stories.
mm.
And we have to understand that. Otherwise, we get off on a lot of crazy things. And that's true in Buddhism or any other tradition. We can lose it. So that's one thing. And becoming more sophisticated about the psyche. maybe studying psychologists that are worth studying. I wouldn't say modern psychology that is so technical and mechanistic or focused on the brain, which has its own place, but depth psychology that moves closer, like Jung psychology or Freud even, moves closer to spiritual matters. And that bridge between those two kinds of the psychological thinking and the spiritual thinking is very fruitful.
Mm. Again, I can't thank you enough on behalf of the whole team at Spirituality in Practice, Frederick and Marianne, who I know are listening right now and cheering us on. Thank you. Thank you for being so generous with your time. Thank you for being, I have to say also, thank you for being so generous as a professional to share so much of your work and skill and learning in this book. It's just invaluable. I know it kind of sounds like I'm almost overdoing it, but really, I can't recommend it enough. And so with that, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Blessings for
And
your
thank
day.
you for
And
understanding so much and having a good conversation. And thank you, Marianne and Frederick, for being so kind to me.
yeah, and thank you to everyone who's listening. We hope that you have enjoyed this as much as we have. As always, please pay attention to what's going on the website. There's all kinds of phenomenal opportunities to explore and question and grow. We are entering into the fall giving season. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we're coming into that kind of end of year campaign, and we're going to be sharing lots of more exciting courses and classes and interviews. And so we hope that you will stay tuned. We hope you'll get involved. We hope you'll sign up. And by all means, if you enjoyed today and the other things we do, hey, you can take a visit to our donation page and send a little thank you. With that, Sir Thomas More, thank you so much. Have a beautiful day, and we'll see you again.